So this is what I was going to talk to you about today. So firstly, there was announcements about deferring taxes. There's furloughs been changing over time, so talk about what those changes have been. The job retention bonus, bounce back loans, the job support scheme that's been introduced and what we know about that, and then actions that you can take now to help plan. So I'll start with the options to defer taxes. So back in March or June, businesses were given the chance to defer taxes and pay them in January 21, and now that's actually been extended. So now you can potentially pay those VAT bills spread across 11 months starting in February 21 through to January 22. And you'll need to opt in to do that. There's no process in place yet for doing that, but HMRC are going to have one ready for the beginning of 21, so look out for that. The other sort of option to defer taxes is through personal taxes. Taxpayers that earn less than 30,000, have less than 30,000 of tax to pay under self-assessment can use HMRC's time to pay facility to push the payment of that back. So this applies to any taxes that were deferred back in July and that were due to be paid then. Originally they were due then to be paid January 21, but now they can actually be pushed back further and spread across the year and not due until January 22. And also anything coming due payments ahead for next year that would normally be paid in January 21, they can be pushed back to January 22. So basically anything that was due in January 21 can now be pushed out to January 22, but you actually have to apply to do that, and you apply using, well, you can do it online using your government gateway. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is the changes to furlough. So obviously since July, the furlough scheme has been becoming less generous. So in July, you were able to claim for 80% of your staff's wages, plus employers' national insurance and plus pensions. In August, that was restricted to just being 80% of your wages, and you couldn't claim for national insurance and pensions anymore. September, that reduced further, so you could just claim for 70% of wages. And in October, you'll just be able to claim for 60% of wages. And originally, the furlough was due to end at the end of October. But as you know, the job support scheme's been brought in, and that will replace it. So Alison will talk to us about that in a moment. The job retention bonus, so this is already in place, but just mentioning it because it still stands, it's not changed, and it can run alongside the job support scheme. So what this is a £1,000 payment or grant to for employers who have kept staff on furlough or kept staff on the payroll. So it is open to anyone that's been on furlough and remains on the payroll at the end of January 2020. So they need to have been in continuous employment, and that can be furlough or not furlough. And to qualify, the employer needs to be up to date with all their PAYE filings and their PAYE payments. And also there's a minimum salary threshold, so you can't just drop someone's salary right down, keep them on a low salary until January. They have to have a minimum earnings of £520 a month to qualify for between November and January. And then bounce back loans. So again, not a new thing, but there's been some changes. So originally, the window to apply for one of these loans has been extended, so you can still apply right up to the end of November. And also the repayment terms have been extended. Originally you had to repay within 6 years, but now that's been extended up to 10 years. The government will cover the first 12 months of interest. No repayments are needed for the first 12 months. And under the new sort of pay-as-you-grow scheme, it's called, there's the opportunity to have a 6-month window where you just pay interest only, and you can have up to 3 windows in the term of the loan. And there's also an opportunity to pause payments entirely for 6 months. So you can only use that window once, and you can only use it once after you've made 6 payments already. And the only other thing to say on that loan is the loan can be up to anything between £2,000 and £50,000, and it's capped at 25% of turnover. So if you've not already applied for that, you might want to think about using this opportunity to apply. And then the big one is the job support scheme. So this is where Alison's going to jump in and talk to us about what we know already.
Yeah, thanks, Pam. So yeah, the job support scheme is to provide additional support to businesses once the furlough scheme finishes. So it starts from the 1st of October. It is definitely not as generous as the furlough scheme. There is quite a lot of negative press about it, with a lot of businesses struggling to see how they can make it work and what's the benefit for them. But basically it starts on the 1st of November and it runs for 6 months. It's open to it's open to every business, but small to medium businesses have no threshold in order to apply. Larger businesses, they have to have some financial threshold in order to apply. That hasn't been published yet, so we don't know the detail around that, but for small to medium businesses it should be pretty simple. Basically what it says is that you have to have an employee employed in your business for 33% of their contracted time, and then you have to pay them for that 33% of that time. And then for any time that they're not working, it's split a third between the government, the employee, and the company. So this is why companies are struggling to kind of get their heads around it, because essentially you'll be paying for the 33% that they're working plus the third that they're not working, which is 22%. So you'll be paying 55% for them working 33%. And obviously those numbers change depending on the time that they work. It is interchangeable, so you can do it on a week by week basis. So you don't have to do the same pattern for the whole 6 months. And it's you get the money back in arrears through the payroll, so you have to cash flow it and then you get the money back through arrears. Do you want to go on to the next slide, Pam, perhaps? Sorry, I didn't hear you. You're on mute. Is that okay?
Right, yeah, so I've done that.
Yeah, no worries. So in terms of what you need to do to make it work, you have to give employees changes in their terms and conditions. With the furlough scheme, we found that because it was a new scheme and because the world was, well, the country was in kind of a panic state, and no one really knew what was going on. Everyone kind of jumped at the furlough scheme, and like certainly within the businesses that we look after about 120 different companies. There wasn't much resistance for people going on the furlough scheme. They saw that as a real kind of benefit, and they saw that as a positive in the situation that they were presented with. We anticipate that won't be the same situation with people wanting to go into the job support scheme, because the employee is doing a third of the lifting of the time that they're not working. So it is likely to be they're going to take a pay drop, and there's going to be resistance of that. And also because with the furlough scheme, it was kind of, if you remember, it started off for I think it was a 2-month period and then extended. So if anyone did have any concerns, it felt like quite a short time, whereas this has been rolled out for 6 months. So you will be asking employees that, to make that change for 6 months, although it can be altered up and down on a weekly basis, but in their mindset, they're making a change for 6 months. So if you are thinking of doing this with any of your teams, it's very important that you get their buy-in, and it's going to have to be documented properly, and HMRC are going to be looking at the documentation to make sure that you're not making any fraudulent claims. So sorry about that noise. So yeah, we would need to make sure that there were changes to the employment contracts, and that there was a proper consultation period to go through any changes that we're looking to make under the job support scheme. Redundancy notice, we've just got a point in there. Do you want me to talk through that now, Pam? Yeah, so as we said, a lot of companies are kind of looking at this job support scheme and thinking that it's not a viable option for them, because essentially they're paying more for employees working less, so they are still considering redundancies. If you are looking at making redundancies, you can't make redundancies whilst you're claiming the job support scheme. So you won't be able, if someone's on that, you won't be able to then think, oh, I'm going to make them redundant. You'd have to stop the job support scheme and then make them redundant, which is a big contrast to the furlough scheme. On the furlough scheme, you could make them redundant and you could use the furlough payment to levy against the notice pay that you had to pay the employees. So as Pam says, the furlough scheme runs until the 31st of October. It's cutting it mighty fine now, but if you were thinking that redundancies were an option, then if you did them now, you would be able to have a small levy of the furlough against the notice pay, whereas you won't be able to do that once it goes onto the job support scheme. You still will be able to make people redundant, it's just that there'll be no kind of rebate, in inverted commas, against that. So yeah, but again, same redundancy rules apply.
I'm going to jump back to this slide. I suppose the only things I would add to all of that was that there is an expectation that employers don't top salaries up. So employees, like Alison said, employees will have a pay cut inevitably because of this, because for the hours not worked, that will be covered a third by government, a third by the employer, and then the balance is a pay cut to the employee. So that's going to affect your employees, but it's also going to affect any directors who are on furlough as well, who have perhaps been chopping up their own pay.
And additionally, sorry Pam, the government haven't announced exactly how the pay is going to be calculated, a third, but there's just been a very little fact sheet that's been sent out. I think they're still working on the detail now, and because it doesn't start till the 1st of November, they have a little bit of time, but the kind of general thoughts are that it will be the money, the contracted hours that you pay people will be what they were before, in kind of February time, before all of this started, because that will stop people hiking wages now to then try and kind of get a benefit from it. So it will be looking at historic wage data of how you calculate it, but the detail of that hasn't been confirmed yet.
And on that, oh sorry, Karen.
The other point to notice as well, just with the, I mentioned as well earlier with the redundancy through furlough, you could levy the redundancy notice pay against furlough. You could also put the people on holiday and claim that back through furlough as well. And a lot of people did that. I think maybe, yeah, that was an oversight of the government at the beginning, that they didn't anticipate that was going to happen, but people would, lots of companies made employees go on holiday and then claimed it back. Of course, you've still got to the 31st of October. So if you've got anyone in your business that have got, some holiday to use, I would, and you're using furlough, if you've already got people on furlough, then I would recommend that you do that. But you won't be able to do that on the job support scheme. They've closed that particular loophole.
Actually, on that, with holiday, the other thing people could do whilst on furlough was training. Do you have a view on whether training is going to be okay?
I haven't heard anything, but because it's only a third of the time that they're not working, I don't think it'll be a bigger issue. But that again, that point hasn't been confirmed.
And then the other thing is, some people will have changed contracts during furlough to bring their staff's salaries down. Do we know if the wages that can be taken into account for the job support scheme will be the February wages based on the original contracts, or if the fact that staff have had reduced wages for a period of time, if it'll be on the new...
So I think the wages are going to be based on what it was in February. I think even if they've been brought down since then, it's still going to be on old wages, I think. But again, that hasn't been confirmed, but I believe it's on old wages. So yeah, we've got lots of clients within Bespoke HR that were thinking, before this job support scheme was announced, they were thinking of reducing people's salaries anyway. Just, at the end of furlough, they were thinking of bringing people back and reducing their salaries and their hours. And now they've kind of got this thrown in the mix as well, and they were saying, oh, so if I reduce their salary in hours, can I do this? I think no, it's, even if you reduce their salary in hours, the job support scheme is going to be based on previous hours. So I think it's going to be pick a horse, which one is going to be more financially viable for you to do the job support scheme on the old contracted hours and salaries, or forget the job support scheme altogether and just go ahead and reduce their hours and their salary. I say just go ahead, it's not that easy, but use that strategy.
Okay, thank you. The other thing to mention is people are eligible for the job support scheme even if they've never been on furlough.
Yep, they had to be on the payroll of the 23rd of September, I think.
Yeah.
It had to be the RTR on the RTR 23rd of September. Yeah, they're completely separate entities, furlough and job support scheme. Yeah, so it's a new strategy.
So the HMRC text that we've mentioned here is that HMRC, they've already said that they will expect people to have contracts in place for these changes, and they expect them to be available as soon as they ask, so they can't be done retrospectively. How to claim, a portal is going to be created. It's not ready yet, but it'll be ready for December for a claim to be put in for November's job support scheme. The claim will be monthly, so whereas under furlough you could make as many claims as you wanted, this is now going to be a monthly thing rather than a however you want. And the other important thing about when you claim is you have to have already paid your staff and filed a RTI submission. So whereas under furlough you could manage your cash flow a bit better because you could calculate your payroll, put in your claim, take 7 days or so to get paid, but you can do kind of all that before you actually have to pay your staff out. Now you have the expectation is that you filed your payroll to HMRC and paid your staff before you put in the claim. So there'll be a cash flow impact there. The unknowns that we talk about on here are, like Alison said, we don't have all the information around how wages will be calculated. The methodology is going to be similar to furlough, but full guidance is still yet to be released. But they have said wages will be based on underlying wages, not what was actually paid during furlough. So yeah, so we'll know more about that when we get it. We believe it's going to be just wages and not employers' national insurance and not pension that can be recovered. Go on to the next. So moving on from that, we've there's some things that you can be doing now to plan and put your business in a better position to manage this transition. So Alison, do you want to talk through the things sort of from your side you think businesses could be doing now?
Yeah, I think what you should be doing now is basically working out, what's the best route for you. As I said before, the furlough is almost a fait accompli. It was like, no, that was the best option for people. It was kind of a no-brainer, really. This isn't necessarily so. It will work for some companies, not necessarily work for all companies. So you need to do some planning and some maths as to, okay, how much is this going to cost you? What is your liability? Do you want to reduce people's hours and reduce people's salaries, or so you kind of spread the risk across a whole team of people, or is there, some roles that are made redundant? So I suppose, yeah, there's three strategies: job support scheme, a kind of across the board pay decrease and salary decrease, or a redundancy. And it is just a case of crunching those numbers and looking at the business and looking at the resources within the business and working out kind of what's best for you. There isn't a magic answer. This is a terrible boat that we're all in, but each business is going to have its own kind of consideration. So yeah, I think it's just key to note that it's just not this job support scheme doesn't suit everyone. But so once you've decided on your strategy, then it is about kind of getting the documentation in place. If you're going with the job support scheme, as I said, you're going to need the documentation with that, and then HMRC, you're going to need that, and also you're going to need employers' buy-in. And then if you're going to do across the board pay decrease or redundancy, then of course then following those procedures and policies. So I think it's, use this time now to work out which route you want to go, and then kind of take necessary steps.
I'd sort of add to that you can already start identifying which of your employees won't qualify. So anyone working less than a third of their usual hours won't qualify for job support at all. So consider how long can you afford to support those roles, how long are they viable, consider when do you expect them to come back to being sort of increased hours, and obviously cash flow planning, model out what the impact of the different scenarios are, look at job support scheme versus redundancies versus pay cuts, and see how long you can sustain your current headcount and their current salaries. So I think that's everything that we wanted to cover. Does anyone have any questions?